Hello everyone, this is Jess from J Rose Alchemic Art, and welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be doing something a little different, and I'm actually going to be drawing an illustration, and I figured I would take you guys along for the ride. I am also going to be talking over the process by answering some getting to know you questions that you guys asked me over on YouTube, Instagram, and Threads, so thank you to everyone who left me some questions. It does make it a lot easier. Hopefully you enjoy watching and can settle in with something cool to drink, so now that it's starting to get a little bit warmer outside. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with the video. Okay, so the very first question we'll start with is, why did you decide to start a social media art account? To be honest, I didn't really ever feel the need or really the desire to share much of myself on social media. I've always been a pretty shy person, and I typically don't talk about myself. I really prefer to observe and listen more than I do talking actually in person, so sharing my art through social media has always been a little bit challenging for me. However, during the pandemic, I had a lot more free time after work, so I did get more interested in watching different YouTube videos, and I happened to stumble across some art accounts. So some of the artists like Apple Cheeks, made by Malin, and especially Thanks You really inspired me and made me want to start drawing and sharing my journey on Instagram. And thus, JRose0193 was born. Yes, I technically started with that handle before I moved to my more permanent one, but we'll get into that with the next question here. So our next question is, where did the name J Rose Alchemic Art come from? So yes, originally when I first started my Instagram account, I went by JRose0193. Not exactly a catchy name, but I really wasn't focused on that at first. I just more or less wanted to share my sketches, my works in progress, my little draw this in your style entries, and the big thing that was really popular when I first started on Instagram in 2020 was the Arteza project. So eventually I was kind of hoping more or less to just share my art and, if I could, maybe make some friends along the way. However, I decided that I really enjoyed making art, and I wanted to share that happiness with others by making little stickers and art prints, things like that. I'll be fair though and admit that my very first creations weren't necessarily the best, but I'm still proud of myself for putting my work out there and just at least working on it consistently like that. So anyway, JRose0193 definitely needed an upgrade, so I really wanted to use the name JRose Atelier though. I've been a big fan of the Atelier video game series, and I really like the idea of my work coming from my atelier, or my little workshop. I was so excited that I even made a little illustration with the new name, only to find out when I was looking to start my own Etsy shop that the name had already been taken on Etsy. So I had to go back to the drawing board, and I really struggled for a while to come up with a new name. Thankfully, I have a very loving and supportive then boyfriend, but now fiance, who suggested the name J Rose Alchemic Art. It still had one of the main themes of the Atelier series, which was alchemy, and it felt like it would go along with my brand. So to be able to create something out of nothing, especially as a newer artist, just felt very fitting, and I'd like to think that it's still pretty catchy to this day. Okay, on to the next one. This one is a two-parter, so I'll start with the first one. Did you take any art classes, either in high school or college, or both? Actually, no. I kind of already talked about it before, but I've always been a really shy kid. I did take the required art classes in grade school, which is really just a lot of coloring or remaking famous art pieces so you could learn about the artists. But that was mostly just the general art classes that they had, when you're 8-9 years old on up. My school didn't really put a big focus on art, but I was already involved in a lot of other extracurricular activities. So between swim team, I did tennis, tap, jazz, and ballet, Girl Scouts, all that stuff. So eventually I kind of didn't really continue on with art. I really always enjoyed drawing as a kid, but I would often hear the typical, starving artist, you're never going to make any money, that sort of thing. So it just really made me not want to pursue it, unfortunately. However, when I did get to high school, I was pretty interested in just maybe taking some of art classes, but I found out pretty quickly, just at my own particular high school, that you had to take this initial art class, which involved a lot of sketch work and things like that, but you had to be able to sketch a self-portrait, and I absolutely was terrified of this idea because obviously you had to do it, and I was just not very confident in sketching people at all. I'm still not very confident to this day. But besides that, it was also going to be posted in the kind of the common area where the cafeteria was and where you would sit to eat your lunch. So I just kind of gave up on that dream very quickly because I wasn't about to do all that. I was also more interested in taking more science and biology classes at the time because I knew then that I already wanted to go into healthcare in some manner. So I just kind of chose to ignore taking any art or music classes in my high school. Looking back, it probably would have been better so I could maybe learn how to draw a little bit better, different techniques or, things like that. But I digress. By the time I did get to college, though, I knew I needed to take some art and humanities classes for my nursing program. So I did end up taking at least an art history class, and thankfully it was actually taught by a proper art professor. So while we did learn more about the history of art and different eras of art and everything like that, we also got to do some fun little projects making Zentangles or little collages. Nothing very high level, but it really reaffirmed my love for art. However, pretty much I took that the semester before I was getting ready for nursing school, so I never really had a chance to do anything else except for, when I got to nursing school, work, study, and go to classes and clinicals. So once again, art was put on a major hold. So the other half of the question was, is art something you do on the side, or is this your main job? I think the previous answer may have started to cover some of this, or at least part of the idea of it, but nope, I actually do all of my art on the side. My main job is actually working as a nurse. So I have been working as a general medical nurse for the last 6 years in a hospital, and I have had a lot of interesting opportunities and been able to see a lot of things. So kind of on my floor, because we are general medical, get to see a little bit of anything and everything. And my unit was also the primary COVID, general / intermediate level unit where when the pandemic first started. That was definitely one of the more interesting experiences of my nursing career, and it was especially hard because I was really close to my family. I still am now. I had just moved out into my first apartment a few months before the pandemic started, and I was used to seeing my parents almost every day and my extended family almost once a week. But this kind of probably comes from my Hispanic heritage, but I always grew up family is always the most important thing. You see them frequently, you do stuff together, all that sort of thing. So when all of a sudden the pandemic started and I was, working night shift, you work your 3/12s in the week and then you come home and, hopefully try to relax. I really couldn't see them. Or I mostly tried to stay away from my family because all of them are a little bit older. I obviously worked consistently with, COVID patients, and I didn't want to risk the chance, even though I always wore my PPE, that I would, happen to spread that along with them, or along to them. Unfortunately, I do remember one particular time where I had a confused patient that kicked off my PPE, but that's besides the point. I was fine, nothing ever happened, but instead I would call them every day and, hopefully find solace in trying my hand at art for the first time in years. So since then, I have obviously, drawn a little bit more consistently than I had, as I was growing up. and it really has become something that I have enjoyed quite a bit. Okay, sorry, I know that was kind of a heavy answer, but we'll move into an equally heavy question of why do you draw ghosts and spooky art so much? Yeah, if you couldn't guess, Halloween is definitely a favorite holiday of mine. I've always loved the idea of like magic, witchcraft, finding mysterious / exploring mysterious unknown areas, things like that. I was definitely that kid that always had to watch like Halloween Town on Disney Channel every October, or read the Spiderwick Chronicles, or things like that. Just really enjoyed the idea of like there's magic in the world like that. If you will notice on my Instagram though, when I very first started my account, I initially started drawing more of a cute art style, more animals or flowers, things like that. I think at that time, I was obviously drawing, in the height of the pandemic, and I was drawing as more of a means to escape my reality. I didn't want to continue thinking of like the difficulties and a lot of the death that I would see, when I was working my night shift, but instead of focusing on the things that were cute and that made me happy. It wasn't really until around like September of 2020 that I was inspired by some of my fellow art friends on Instagram to create the world of Spookful Hollow. In particular, I really want to say like Fawnettle and Kibo and Friends had some really lovely original characters, or OCs, and it made me want to create like my own little world and characters. However, perhaps because Halloween was like pretty quickly approaching, and I would see a lot of, spooky, and like people were getting ready to draw for Halloween, and like Inktober in particular. But between that and my love of, that time of year, I decided I wanted to draw a spooky but cute Halloween world. After the Halloween season passed, I did go back to drawing, more of my cute scenes and draw this in your style entries, cats, food, things like that. But I really felt myself more drawn to drawing one of my original characters, Princess Lucy, and her friends more consistently. She was really fun to draw, and I love drawing more of the world of Spookful Hollow. I think it also healed me mentally to draw these cute little ghosts, because it reminded me that even when we're gone, there will still be those who remember us and our stories. Death doesn't have to be scary. It can also be a remembrance of that person's life and how they made us feel. In particular, I remember a specific quote that we learned while we were in nursing school, and that certainly came back to me, as I was working as a nurse, but also in my drawing. But I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I really hope that my work kind of embodies that in some small way. Or at least that it makes you think about these characters and their stories. That, death doesn't have to be the end of everything. We can still remember what those people did and how they made us feel. Okay, I think that's enough for some of the more heavy topics, so let's move on to some more easier questions. This next one is, what is your favorite scary movie? Okay, to be honest, I really can't handle scary movies, at all. The most you can maybe get out of me is maybe to watch, The Haunted Mansion or The Nightmare Before Christmas. Coraline is okay, it's kind of spooky, but, obviously it's a cartoon, so I can handle it a little bit better. But yeah, most things cannot do. I will actively either try to avoid it the best that I can, or at the very least, if I have to watch it, I'm probably keeping my eyes closed for a good majority of the movie. I'm definitely, I'm gonna be honest, I'm definitely a scaredy cat. Scaredy cat, but spooky cute lover. I think that's probably a pretty good business model. That's basically what you can sum up with my art. That's fine. Okay. Next one. What is your favorite color to draw in? Oh yeah, if you couldn't tell, I really love to draw in pinks and blues. Pink is definitely my favorite color, But I always love drawing like scenes at nighttime, so any excuse I have to draw like a starry night and a moon, I will definitely take it. Our next one is, how did you get started with vending/selling your art in person? This is actually a really good question. To be honest, it took me a lot of courage to feel comfortable to even sell my art in person. I was definitely like very unsure about myself and like showing my face in public and selling my art. Not that I wasn't proud of my work, but I still hold on to that like feeling that I would be embarrassed if like people who know me personally would like think poorly of me and my art. But I really wanted to try vending in person at least once after like a couple years, and that really pushed me to eventually join like different Facebook groups and things like that, where the event coordinators would post like when they were having specific events and shows, like the dates and times, things like that. So that's kind of how I found like a more local winter market at a school, and the rest is history. You can see how that market went on one of my previous videos. I believe it's specifically talking about my first, art market. But I had a lot of fun with it, so it really made me want to continue selling my art in person. Okay, next question is a little bit of an easier one, but it's still a good one. What is your favorite dessert? Honestly, just about anything that has to do with chocolate, I'm usually a happy camper. I really just enjoy the flavor, and yeah, that applies for most anything between like ice cream, cake, cookie, or otherwise. So, easy enough one there. Okay, our next question is, what is your favorite Ghibli movie? Honestly, it is probably Howl's Moving Castle. I distinctly remember watching it for like the very first time on Toonami on like Cartoon Network on like a Saturday night one day, and I just love the story and the character so much. Honestly, Calcifer is still probably one of my favorite characters of like all of the Ghibli movies that I have seen, and maybe that's why I like, drawing and sculpting him so much. Definitely, I think one of my favorite lines of his is still the "may all your bacon burn" when he gets very upset about, having to cook for the group, but it's okay, and obviously it works out very well. That was definitely the inspiration behind the like clay frying pan sculpture that I make of him, and honestly, for the most part, it seems to sell out pretty quickly whenever I bring it to my conventions, so hopefully that means that people like it just as much as I do. To be fair, I haven't seen like all of the Ghibli movies that have been produced. I've seen a good portion, but I think Spirited Away is also like a close second of the favorites. Just the story is super interesting, and the art was always really inspiring to me. So yeah, definitely a close second on that one. Okay. Our next question is, what is your next big project that you would like to work on? To be honest, I have been thinking a lot about possibly making tote bags next, just because I really love the idea of creating like some spooky cute bag designs, and then obviously being able to, get them together, being able to carry all my stuff in it, and then, walking around town with it. I have been thinking about like different designs, like, spooky but cute, maybe even something probably with the ghost cats, and making something like head empty, no thoughts, and just stuff like that. So I think that'd be really fun. And I've also been thinking about making some new enamel pin designs, since I'm actually starting to run kind of low on some of my current designs. But there are still like just enough that I have obviously at least one of each left. There are some that are not as popular at my conventions, at least, and I have a couple more of them, but I think all of them are still really cute, and they have their own charms as well. So I've also been thinking about making more bookmark designs, but I'll probably wait until I've sold more of like my current design first. So again, we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. And I think, like, kind of one of my more lofty ideas for, like, probably years in the future, but it's still nice to think about, would be to create my own art book of Spookfall Hollow. I just think it would be really cool to someday be able to, like, flip through a lot of my bigger illustrations and sketches of the world and the characters. But again, I think that would probably take a long while to even get that ready. But hey, if you dream, you might as well dream big, right? Our next question is, where do you find inspiration for your art? I usually find a lot of inspiration with, like, the media I consume or the world around me, to be honest. Between, like, some of the books that I've read, like the Lockwood & Co. series, or different video games like Luigi's Mansion or the Persona series, things like that. Obviously, not necessarily the specific themes, but definitely, like, the background art, the characters that you see, the story in general, obviously, but yeah, just things like that, they definitely really inspire me and make me want to create, like, a lot of different ideas. It doesn't always have to be the same thing over and over. So hopefully you can kind of get a feel for that with this illustration that we're working on together here. I also really get inspired by different things that I see in the world. So in particular, like, if I see a very pretty garden, different bookstores, or even honestly just, like, walking around, and to be honest, walking, like, through a mall is, like, one of the things that probably makes me happiest. I'm not sure if it's just, like, having the opportunity to walk around and explore places that aren't really home, but it's just generally, like, a good refresh for my imagination and creativity, so it definitely helps me. Okay, the next question here is, what is your favorite part of the art process? To be honest, as much as I love drawing my characters and everything like that, it is definitely the background art that really speaks to me. And I think that I have actually been that way ever since I was a child even. I always really loved drawing, like, little waterfall scenes, or, Tartarus from Persona 3, different, like, big castles or things like that. And you can probably tell that even with my art now. Probably even with this illustration in particular. I obviously find a lot of enjoyment in making, like, these big detailed background works, and then obviously I try to include that, making more details with my characters and things like that. But yeah, for sure, what my first love, and probably will always remain that way, is just being able to create some really fun and detailed, like, background work. So we've already obviously come pretty far in this video and with our drawing process here, so this is, your reminder as well as mine. Make sure you take a break and, grab yourself a snack like I did here. Definitely drink some water, get up, do what you gotta do. That's okay if you need to pause the video for a second. Obviously there is still more to be done here with this illustration though. The next question here is, what is your favorite media to use for your art? I feel like that this should hopefully be kind of easy to tell, but for the most part, I do like to use my iPad here for, like, all of my digital work. Not that I don't enjoy doing, like, my sketch work, and I have my own sketchbook and everything, and obviously I create a lot with my polymer clay as well. But I definitely think for right now, digital work is probably my favorite. Obviously, I am still learning quite a bit with, like, the different brushes and different techniques you can use on there. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's just fun to be able to play around with that and just try different things in there. As far as traditional work goes, though, I primarily like to use just a regular paper and pencil. Colored pencils are probably, like, my other number one pick if I'm going traditional work, but it's not that I can't use, like, I have tried to, paint, obviously. I've used Posca markers. I've used lots of different things, and, just to be honest, like, yeah, paper and pencil is just what kind of speaks to me the most. And then as far as like polymer clay goes, there's not really too much variety that I typically go with. I will either use like Sculpey, obviously that's my big one, and then I will use the Craft Smart that's available at Michael's and at Hobby Lobby. And yeah, to be honest, that is typically what I use for polymer clay. I obviously used different like sculpting materials, or I should say like materials to help like shape and cut and do things like that to make the job easier sometimes. But again, it just kind of depends on what I'm working on for the day. Okay, one thing I will talk over, since we're actually getting somewhat closer to the end of this illustration, you will notice that I have a really hard time with drawing trees for whatever reason. I don't know if it's like my mind just can't remember what exactly a tree looks like, or whatever goes haywire in there sometimes. That's okay, because obviously it ended up working out. But yeah, I redrew those trees at least I'm pretty sure at least 3 or 4 times. Eventually I just ended up finding a design that I liked. I decided to go with a different style of tree. And honestly, that's kind of another good thing about art. Trial and error is never a bad thing. Obviously, it lets you try out and see, what you like to draw yourself, and like just different techniques you can use. So yeah, never be afraid to just try different things and see what works best for you and for your art, and hopefully what makes you happy when you do it. Okay, our next question is, have you ever vended in a market or an artist alley that is outside of your current state? And to be honest, the answer right now is no. I am very hesitant about like tax laws within the US. Obviously, I want to make sure that I do the proper thing and don't get in trouble with it later. So I have only really vended in my own current state of Illinois. To be honest, I would be interested in possibly traveling and maybe trying out different markets or venues for like those sorts of things. But again, I just want to make sure, and I don't think it would be an issue. I think most events are usually pretty good about, providing you with the correct tax papers and things like that, so that way you can pay your taxes after the event. But the other half of that is, obviously, when you travel, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. So just being able to find that balance is obviously an important factor. And it makes me hesitant, but again, I don't think I'm like completely unopposed to doing that in the future. We just obviously have to see if that's even a possibility. So for right now, I will probably still, for the most part, focus on, vending at like more of my local areas, or maybe even like areas that are like a few hours away. But again, we'll just see how it goes. I also did want to point out that I did try and get different angles while I was filming this, so I hope you guys don't mind that I've flipped back from like different areas of, how I'm showing off my art process here. So just in case you we're looking away from the screen, turn back now and see what's going on in the background here. And actually, we have come up to our very last question, y'all. The end is in sight. Yeah, so for this very last one, it was, do you think you will ever show your face on your YouTube videos? And I do not know. Again, it kind of plays into the whole, do I feel comfortable sharing my face on the internet? To be honest, I have posted a few pictures on Instagram of my face, so, if you're actually really curious, you could go find me there. And it's on my website as well. There is actually like a getting to know me section, and yeah, again, my picture is right there just in case you're curious. But otherwise, I just don't know. I feel like I have a very awkward face. That's usually why I'm more comfortable even just, not presenting in myself in front of others. But yeah, maybe someday, if people are actually, I guess, let me know in the comments if you would like to see my face in my future YouTube videos. But again, we'll leave that up to the future for now, I guess. That's definitely something that we'll worry about then. But yeah, this is actually pretty much the end of the video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed, hopefully you drew along with me or were listening in the background. That's totally okay too. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed getting to know me a little better and about my art journey, and being able to see this lovely little ghost-drawn carriage. Yes, this very spooky scene. It's very fun. But yeah, I hope that you had a good time and look forward to the next one. And until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day.